dog.
Wake up! I said turn that damn thing on, Paul. Where's Jeff when you need him? Welcome to Coffee Hour. It's early out on the West Coast. Dude, y'all couldn't hear me yelling, but behind the scenes could. There you go. First mistake of the day, folks. First mistake of the day. Forgot to turn the mic on. What's up, everybody? I know I'm muted, but I'm not muted now. Good morning. Welcome to Coffee Hour. It is hump day. Welcome. All right. Great day. We're halfway through the week. Thanks for taking the time out of your day to join me here on Coffee Hour. It is always great to be with you to get my day started. I have some great meetings lined up today with some engineers. Hopefully I can set them straight. So we're going to do a little lesson today. We're going to do what's something different. I get a lot of questions. I would say the vast majority of questions that I get are asking me about dwelling calculations because nobody does them anymore, right? Unless you're on an exam, everybody just says, oh, this is a size service I need, or this is this, or this is that. So, but one guy sent me a message. He said, Paul, why don't you see if you can do a speed version? And that means that you're going to miss some things. That means that I'm going to go very quickly. But he said, Paul, challenge yourself. See if you can do a speed version. Remember, I told you I take requests at paulabernathy.com. And the guy said, Paul, do me a favor. Can you do any speed, standardized method, basic method calculations, speed, throw numbers out there. Give us something to think about. We can always go back and pause. I said, you know what? I can do that. But to do that, I have to sacrifice something. So I have to sacrifice the good mornings. Okay, so I'm going to wish you all a good morning. I see you all in there. David, Manny, Jason, Christopher, Paul, Yusul, Adam, Frank, Manny, Adam, New Place. I see all of you in there shouting out. What's up, Thomas? I see you all in there still working at the BWI airport. Everybody in there. So we're going to sacrifice a little of that today in order to be able to do what the requester wanted. And let me try to get into some speed code. Speed. And I've got some slides we'll try to work with, and I'll go back and forth into the code. Well, let's see how this works, okay? A little bit something different. Again, we do something new every day, and we try to find topics. Again, you can help me out by sending in requests for various topics. I'm more than happy to do that in the morning, or any story you want to hear more about. I think y'all heard in the news about the guy that plays Jamal, the one that played Theo Huxtable, died, drowned swimming with his family, going out swimming in Costa Rica. It's terrible. You go out to spend time with your family, relaxing, and then something like that happens. Devastating to the family. Devastating. Also, we lost a Ozzy Osbourne yesterday. Tough there. We knew he was sick. It was amazing that he got to do another concert. I liked Ozzy, but I wasn't a big, I didn't listen to that kind of music. But Prince of Darkness, but for all those that did, it is an era. We're listening to him. Sadly, we're all going to kick that way, but he was sick. I think he had Parkinson's disease and amongst other things. He'd been slowing down for years, so I think he knew what was coming. So anyway, rest in peace, him and anybody else, and anybody out there that's struggling with anybody, the family member that is sick or something like that. Thoughts and prayers are with you. Stay together tight as family. God's will be done, and it is what it is. We can't change that, but we can definitely try to influence it with prayer. All right, so let's get into the day. I'm going to jump into the lesson real quick today. Okay, so if you have any questions as we go, I'm going to go very quickly. Okay, this is something different I'm going to do today. Okay, so if you're new to the channel, you just came in, you're like, what the hell is this guy talking about? Okay, why is he going so fast? Why is he jumping back and forth in the code? It's because it was a request, right? And speaking of which, hold on here. Let me make this a little bigger. Sorry about that. Okay. It was a request. So we're going to do it this way. Okay, so when I'm doing a load calculation for dwelling or individual dwelling units, doesn't matter. Commercial to me is much easier because the engineer's already done it and you're just looking at the paperwork, unless you're the design engineer, okay? Residential, again, you can just do that and look at it and say, that's a 200, that's a 400, yada, yada, yada. But knowing how to do it, it's two different things. Now, on an exam, you got to know the standard method. In the real world, you're not going to be using the standard method. You're going to be using the optional method 100% of the time. I can't think of any reason why you'd use the standard method. But for an exam, for some reason, we like to present standard methods or the general method, okay? All right, I'm going to sneeze. Hold on. All right, I might have to do that again. All right. So first things first, when I think of a dwelling, the first thing I want to do is I want to get the dimensions. I need to get the outside dimensions of everything. So I'm looking at the drawings. I want to know what the dimensions are. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look for any open porches, and those are not included on the drawings. I mean, not included in the calculation, right? So like here's the front door, here's the steps coming up, here's the front porch. All of this stuff right here, open, not counted in the calculation, all right? Although the porch has a roof on it, it's considered open and therefore is not included in the calculation. So you're not including open porches and things like that, okay? Scale rulers are used to determine the square footage. Yes, that type of thing. No, and I should have muted. I'm sorry. Somebody knows that I'm on a live stream, but they called anyway. Sorry about that. My bad. All right, so first thing is I want to get all the areas. Now, where is that found in the NEC? Well, let's pop over to the NEC. So here's 220.5. And by the way, I'm in the 2023 edition of the NEC. That's where I'm going to be today, so get used to it. All right. So down here, you see floor area. That's now 220.5C is where the floor area is going to be found. And it says the floor area of each floor shall be calculated. Each floor, by the way, they have a two-story building. Each floor. You have a basement, unfinished, but it can be adaptable for future use. Obviously, it can. It's going to be counted. Okay. It says, so the floor area of each floor shall be calculated from the outside dimensions of the building. Don't try to get involved in the walls, the thickness, the sheetrock. No, outside dimensions, okay? Keep it simple. Of the building or dwelling unit or other area involved, it says for dwelling units, the calculated floor area shall not include open porches. Okay, remember now, we're in the 2023. So don't ask me some dumbass question about how I thought it included garages. No, that's not the 2023. That's all we're talking about today. So open porches or unfinished areas not adaptable for future use as a habitable room or occupiable space. Okay, so what does that mean to you and me? That means that you notice that the garage's square footage now gets included in that 3 VA per square foot. Okay, but what you don't is open porches and unfinished areas not adaptable for future use. Okay, now you can argue with your AHJ if your garage doesn't have air conditioning, it's separated from the conditioned space, and you want to argue that square footage. That's your beef, okay? For me, since it used to have garages in there and now it does not have garages in there in the 2023, that tells me that they want that garage area to be considered square footage. Why? Somebody could put a mini split unit in there. Somebody could adapt it. So it is adaptable for future use. Same with the basement. So when I have a basement, it may be unfinished, but it is still adaptable for future use. So it is part of your measurement and it's going to be in that 3 VA per square foot, okay? Just because it's unfinished now doesn't mean it's not going to be adaptable at a later date. So those are the kind of things that we're looking for, okay? But you'll notice it says open porches not to be included. Even if it has a roof on it, okay? Back deck, back porch, has a roof, doesn't matter. It's an open porch, and so does not, you just have to subtract that from your overall calculation if you have it on your drawings. Now, as far as gathering the information, what are you going to have to do as an electrician? You know what you're going to have to do. You need to go around. You need to determine what your square foot is. You need to find the outside dimensions, whether they have a blueprint, a drawing. You measure it off. Pretty simple. Measure the diameters. Now, you could have areas inside, right, that you have to be be thought of, that type of thing. But generally, you're just going to take the square footage. Okay. All right. Next, you have to go around and start collecting the things that your customer are going to be fastened in place. Dishwashers, garbage disposers, things like that. What's fastened in place, okay? You need to start making that list up so that you can start getting the nameplate values, right? So you're looking for those fast-in-place appliances, and you're going to have to determine what the VA is for each one of them. Okay, so you're going to have to possibly do some calculations, right? If we have the amps, we know the voltage, then we can calculate for the VA, right? So you have to start compiling this information. So in any house that I ever went to, one of the first things that I said to the builder or the owner, whoever was doing it, is I said, look, I need a list. I need to know what appliances you're planning on putting it in here, right? In a standard house, a standard dwelling, it's like a spec house or something that's not like we used to do the multi-million-dollar houses, right? So they knew damn well what was going in there, okay? Because they were picking these things. This wasn't oh, let's build it as we go Lincoln log process. They knew. It's just that I had to ask for it, okay? And a lot of people don't want to ask for it, right? They just, again, I'm just in there to wire it. And by the way, hold on, I need to fix something here so I can make sure we see all these slides, okay? Fixing this thing on the fly, folks. All right, there we go. Let me figure this thing out here. Okay. So at the end of the day, I need to start gathering all the information that's necessary in order to be able to do this load calculation. It makes it much easier. And by the way, if you're in our Fast Tracks programs, you should have the little calculation sheets. Okay. They should already be in your program. If you say you don't see them or you don't have them, you don't know what you're talking about, because I know they're there. I put them there. They're there. Make sure you download them. You say, I didn't see none in there. You're full of crap, because they're in there, okay? So if you're in our Fast Tracks program, they're there. Make sure you click on them and download them and laminate them, use them, whatever, but they're there, okay? Now, again, Fast Tracks students, okay? Our forms aren't available for the general public. They're only for if you're in a Fast Tracks program, okay? Makes sense? Somebody said, well, I've been to your site, Paul, and I haven't seen these damn calculation forms. That's because you're probably not in the Fast Track system. So you're not going to see them, that type of thing. It makes sense. Also, I should say my coffee is resting safely today on our coasters, which are available over on our website. Shameless plug. Shameless plug. All right. So once I go around and start gathering my list from the owner, and you might say, well, I'm not going to worry about that. That's up to you. But again, a professional electrician, an electrician does their due diligence, will go through and try early on to do a real load calculation. Now, I get it. A lot of you can just look at something, you've done it before, you look around and you say, oh, this is just standard appliances. You go 200 amp, that's fine. Not the case when you're doing an exam prep, okay? It doesn't work that well. But good news is they got to give you everything anyway. So they'll have a list of everything on the drawing, on whatever they give you. So, but real world, different. Got to gather it. Next, how many small appliance branch circuits are going to be installed? So you know the code says a minimum of 2, right? So we've got to deal with that 210.11c, 1 and 2. We say, okay, I get it. I got to have a minimum of 2. And then 220.52 is going to tell you that they're 1,500 VA each. So we know that. So the question is, how many do you need to get the job done? Now, these small appliance branch circuits have to cover countertops, but it also covers the general receptacles around the wall. So they're all on the same branch circuit, right? So you're saying, well, how many do I need? Well, the National Electrical Code doesn't tell us when it comes to dwellings how many receptacles can be on a branch circuit, right? It doesn't tell us that, especially these small appliance branch circuits, these 20 amp ones. So it doesn't tell us. So we have to use some common sense and even layout and general practice skills to know this. But it may behoove you to have an additional. For example, I might run the 2 small appliance branch circuits for my kitchen, but I might run a separate one for the dining room. Well, guess what? That's a 3rd small appliance branch circuit. Even if you argue, you're like, dude, Paul, that ain't going to draw nothing. It's a damn dining room. Ain't nobody going to plug anything into that damn dining room. Well, it is part of the list when you look at the applications in 210.52c. You're going to see, and B, you're going to see that all of those kind of intermingle together. So it is a small appliance branch circuit, okay? So, and another question people ask, refrigerators. Refrigerators, for example, in a kitchen are supposed to generally be on the small appliance branch circuit. Whether you like that or not, it's supposed to be on it. And yes, that is GFCI protected. Of course, now in the 2023, all of those receptacles in the kitchen have to be GFCI protected. So now it's just a moot point when people go, ooh, I'm not going to put my refrigerator on a GFCI. Suck it up, put it on a GFCI, be code compliant. You can always replace food. You can't replace people, okay? Stop bitching and whining about putting things on GFCIs like sump pumps. It's going to flood my basement. Who gives a damn if it floods your basement? Drain it out. At least nobody's going to get killed from being shocked in it, okay? I grew up with a basement that flooded every time it rained, all right? It wasn't 20 years till I was 20-some years old before I decided to put a sump pump in for my mom, okay? So until then, that house is still there today. That house is still there, okay? So again, stop crying. Oh, and people say, oh, what about my freezer with my deer meat, whatever? Suck it up. You know you're going to go out and kill more deer anyway if you're a hunter. Who cares? All right. It's about safety. It's not about convenience. So anyway, enough of that. So anyway, make sure that you have the small appliance branch circuits that you need, right? Okay. So if I need 3, I put in 3. If I need 4 to accommodate the pantries, dining rooms, kitchens and all that, then you have 3. The difference is, remember, the number of small appliance branch circuits you have is 1,500 VA each for your calculation, okay? Laundry circuits. If you just have one laundry area in your house or in the house that's working, you have one laundry room, okay, that's a 20 amp circuit to the laundry room. You can pick up laundry, pick up the washing machine. Typically, you'll have a separate dryer circuit. Remember, dryer circuits are not required by the NEC. However, if you do put in a dryer, you still have to calculate it out at a minimum of 5,000 VA or the nameplate, whichever is greater, all right? And when the standard method, you're going to go with 5,000. Even if the nameplate came back at 4,500, you're going to have to bump that up to 5, right? Because that's what it says in 220.54 when dealing with clothes dryers, right? We all remember this. It's a speed round. Guys, I'm throwing you stuff quickly, okay? This is something unique today's show. I'm just going to be throwing stuff at you. You got to retain it and ask your questions, but I'm going to be throwing data at you. Somebody requested this kind of show, so I said, what the hell? Let's do it. All right, now, one of the things you have to do, and obviously like on an exam, you're going to get a list of all of the goodies that are located in this dwelling. For example, right here, we see the dimensions of the house, 35 by 55. These are their outside dimensions. There is a front porch that is 7 by 10. Y'all know that I'm going to get rid of that. So whatever this 35 times 55, this 7 times 10 is 70. That's going to be subtracted from this total. Why? Because 220.5C says that open porches, we do not include. We take those out. So we did, okay? Now, in this case, we had small appliance branch circuits. We went around and we looked at it and we said, look, I need 4 small appliance branch circuits. Even though the National Electrical Code says a minimum of 2, where do you get that? 210.11C, 1. But I need 4. So I'm going to put 4 in there. So that's what you see 4 right here. So that is 1,500 VA each. Now, as far as the laundry branch circuit, there's 2 of them here. So this is not that big of a house, but again, there's going to be 2 laundry circuits that I'm going to be running dedicated to that. So that would be 2 of them, okay? Next is a water heater. We have a water heater that's 4.5, so 4,500 watts. Gives us the voltage on it. That is set value. So that is one of the appliances, right? Fastened in place. We have a dishwasher. It's 10 amps times 120. We got to get a VA out of that. You should always be conditioning yourself, guys, to immediately get the VA value, okay? So in your mind, you'd be thinking, oh, I got volts, I got amps, so I need to go 10 times 120, and that's 1,200. So that's 1,200 VA, and you can write that down to the side. I will condition you, everybody that prepares for an electrical exam, that the moment you see something with amps and volts and you know that you'll be calculating out the VA or the watts, that you need to convert quickly as possible. Same thing with any motors. For example, in-sink waste disposer, basically it's a motor just stuck underneath, grind all the crap up in your sink. Okay, so it is going to have a horsepower rating on that motor. And so that's a 0.5 horsepower. So the first thing that you need to do is go to the 430.248 and say, look, I need to find what that value is, and see, we'll do that right now. So I would go immediately over to the code, and I'd go down here, and I'd go to 430, and I'd get down here to 430. And I do this for all the motors while I'm here. Save yourself time, right, is how we would do it. So I just go down here and get down here to motors. I'll close this down. Let's get down here. So we don't want to deal with this one. So this is 247. That is for DC, in case you get that kind of question. 248 is single phase. That's what we're talking about. And of course, remind you, there is a 249. That is two phase, very rare. And then here's your 430, 250. That's for your three phase motors. This is at the back of 430. All right, so I'm going to go back up here to one that we're dealing with. And this is 248. This is single phase. So now, here's another big question that people ask me all the time. Is it, okay, so right here, it gave 115. So that does align itself with the motors, and that is going to align itself with the table. But if this had been 120, doesn't matter. When you go back to the table, you're still going to end up in the 115 column. Why? Because there's notes there that said, look, if it's 120, yada, 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 that range there is fine. You can use 115 for that range. Same thing with the 240s and the 230s and all that kind of stuff. So don't let it overthink it, okay? Now, in these cases with motors, right? So we'll go back to the motor, and it looks like it is half horsepower, and so it's going to be under this column here. And we'll come down, and here's that language I told you for the voltage ranges, 110 through 120. Again, that's just going to be under this column, and then 220 to 240, it's going to be under the 230 column right here. If something is unique and it's specifically single phase 208, then you know what it is. You'll come right to the 208. Okay. This is kind of giving you the range, right? So anyway, we're at 115 right here, 115 column. We're going to come down, and what we're looking for is a half horsepower. Let's just right here, half horsepower, 9.8, right? 9.8. So once we know what 9.8 is, again, now we have the amps, and then we know what the actual voltage is because it gave it to us on our sheet right here, which is 115. This is exactly what you're going to use. Some people say, well, isn't this a 120 volt circuit? Because I see some other stuff with 120. Absolutely not. Use exactly what they give you in the question. If they give you 115, you use 115, okay? All right. You don't go, oh, well, I'll use 120 because it says 115, but everything else is 120. No, you use exactly what they give you because that's what's pulled directly from the table to select that motor's FLC, okay? So in this case, 9.8 times 115 equals 1,127. That is your VA. That's what it would be right here for your in-sync waste disposer. You continue to go through the list. Same thing right here, trash compactor, 7.5 amps times 120. Put it right there. 3 attic fans, 4.2 each. That's just 4.2 times 3 because there's 3 of them. Equals 12.6 times 120 volts. That's going to give you your VA. Electric clothes dryer, 5.5. That's greater than 5, so you're going to be using the 5.5. Okay, 5,500. In-sync counter-mounted cooking unit, 7 kW. Wall-mounted oven, 6 kW. Electric heat, there's 3 banks of it, so this is basically strip heat, 3 banks of it in there that's built into a central air system or central heating system, so it's got the separate cooling and it's got the separate heating. We treat the heating in this as the heating load. Now, what's going to move this air, these 3 units, these banks of 5 kW heaters that are built into this box that's right next to the central air unit or next to the air handler, what's going to be moving that heat? Moving the air through it. It's going to be the air handler, right? So the heat is going to work with the air handler. Same as when the air conditioning is working, it's going to use the air handler to move that what? It's going to move that cool air. So the key here is that air handler. That air handler is not a non-coincident load. Y'all have heard me talk about that, right? Y'all have heard me talk about 220.60, non-coincident loads. When this one's on, this one won't be running. When this one's on, this one won't be running. Or some type of thermostatic interlock or something that keeps one from running. Then you can take the larger of the two, okay? Whether it's the heat or it's the AC, because those are, in this case, are non-coincident loads, okay? Now, just as a little throw out there to you, because I know people ask me these questions all the time. And remember, we're doing speed rounds. So you got to take what you can from this. People say, well, what about if I have separate baseboard heat? Separate baseboard heat is treated differently. It's not a non-coincident load because somebody can manually turn on baseboard heaters and still have the air conditioning running, okay? So very common. So again, those are treated differently, and both of those will get added into the load calculation, okay? So again, that's not a non-coincident load. Only when loads are non-coincidental, means they will not be operating at the same time, do we have to do this little comparison dance, okay? Don't worry. We're going to try to get to that if you stay with me. All right, so we went down through here. Now, again, for the heat, I don't need to do anything because that's already been converted. So that's totals, 3 banks of 5, so that's 15. I can already tell you that the heat's going to be greater than the AC without doing anything. I can already tell you that, all right? But you'll go through the exercise later. But if you're seasoned enough to look at something, you can look in this and go, Jesus, that's 15 kW. Plus, I got to add the value from the air handler, which we got to convert, which is 3.2 times 115. So that's another 368. So it's 15,368 for the heat. The air conditioning, even if that air conditioning unit is the largest motor in this dwelling, right? So I'm going to take the air conditioning unit, this one right here, at 125% plus the sum of the other loads that go along with it. So I could look at this 16.6, right? And I'm going to do this, and I can do this, and I'm going to do this times 230. And that gives me 3,818 VA, but I need to take that at 125%. So I'm gonna do this times 1.25, and that gives me 4,772.5. Okay, so that plus the sum of the other ones, which is 368. And then this one right here, obviously, you know, is gonna be less than 368 because that's 2. So that's 2 times 115. That's only 230. All of that is so much less than the heat. So before I even get started in my journey, I already know that the AC is going to be discounted. It's gotten rid of. There is no AC to worry about in this case. We're only going to worry about the heat. Makes sense? All right. That's how quickly you can do it and kind of get a basic understanding of what's going on. Okay. All right. Now, if you have our program, you have these little fill in the blank things. That's a little printout that a little form that you get. I encourage you to print them. If you say, I don't have the form, Paul, and you're in our program, then you're not following the program right, because it is right there in your face. You can't miss it if you're in our course. You literally can't miss these forms. If you say, well, I'm in your Fast Tracks program, I don't see any of these forms, you're not looking. You're not in the program if you say that, because they're right there in your face. There's a download link that you can download it. All right, so anyway, only available to Fast Track students. All right, so the first thing we're going to try to do, it tries to teach you the steps. First step, general lighting, general use under 220.41. Okay, so if we go look at the NEC, the very first step, bear with me, I'll get back to it, 220.41. All right, you see a lot of graying out here, okay, because things have moved around a little bit in the NEC. So here's the first one. Again, notice that it says 3 VA per square foot. Right there. And it says that all general use receptacles, 20 amperes or less, not including the small appliance, not including the laundry, not including any other individual branch circuit to a specific dedicated load, then that would not be a general use receptacle, by the way. Hello, it wouldn't be. Okay, all your general lighting outlets that you're going to be putting around for illumination, all of that's covered in 210.70. So that 3 VA per square foot is covering all of those loads. You don't have to add anything additional, okay? Anything. It's also covering the receptacles in the garage, and it's also covering the receptacle that you would have at the front of the dwelling, in the back of the dwelling. All of that is covered in the 3 VA per square foot, okay? Again, so somebody asked me, do we use 180 VA per square foot, per strap in a residential? Absolutely not. Absolutely not, we don't, okay? It's all about the 3 VA per square foot, okay? All right, so in this case, all of our 6 foot, 12 foot rule, all of that spacing stuff, all of those receptacles, all of the general lighting everywhere, general lighting in the kitchen, general lighting in the bathroom, general lighting in the living room, general lighting in the basement, all of that is already covered in this 3 VA per square foot. The next question that somebody asked me says, Paul, I have an unfinished basement. They're coming back to finish it in a year. Okay, very common in construction. They'll leave the basement unfinished because a homeowner might want to finish it. You size everything out. You do the 3 VA per square foot. Even the unfinished basement gets counted in that square footage. Then they come back later and want to finish off the basement and just put some convenient receptacles and some lighting. Do I have to add any additional VA to the load? Absolutely not. The 3 VA already takes that into consideration if you took the outside dimension of each floor, and that includes the unfinished basement, okay? If they want to finish off the garage, remember, that's included now in that 3 VA per square foot. You're not sectioning that out like you used to in the 2020 or 2017. Now, if you go look at 220.5C, you'll see that the word garage is missing because that means it needs to be a part of your 3 VA per square foot. Okay? Keep all that stuff in mind. We're moving quick. We're rolling here. All right. So now, since we got the 3 VA per square foot, and we know that 35 times 55, and we'll go and do those dimensions. 35 times 55 is 1,925, right? But we're taking out that 70 square feet, right? Because that's not to be included. That's what it says in 220.5C, right? So I'm going to take out 70, and that's where we get to 1855, as you see on the screen. So it's 3 VA times the square footage, okay, or what we've come up with after our calculation, 1855. That's going to be, and don't trust me, sometimes I leave little things in there for you to see if you're watching, if you're staying awake. Okay, 1855 times 3 is 5,565, right there. Okay, so that's the first step. So you haven't even done any demand factors yet. You're just gathering the information. Next, again, knowledge check. What is the minimum calculated load for lighting and general use receptacle outlets in a dwelling unit? 3 VA per square foot, 3 VA per linear foot, 1,500 VA per circuit, 15 amperes per circuit. Dun, 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 dun. We can do this. See if anybody answers. Probably not going to answer, so I will tell you the answer is A, number 1. Enough of that. Okay. So it's 3 VA per square foot. We've already talked about that. So that's how you determine it. This also applies to the individual dwelling units of a multifamily dwelling as well. If you're doing individual for the feeder, for example, to an individual dwelling unit. So that's why it's so important to understand these things. Keep in mind that this 3 VA per square foot, whether you're using the standard method or the optional method, it's still going to be 3 VA per square foot. Now, is this going to change in the 2026 edition of the National Electrical Code? Absolutely. This is going to drop down to 2 VA per square foot. Okay. And again, all probably because of more energy efficient luminaires, LEDs, all these type of things, motors being more efficient, all this kind of stuff. So all of that probably contributes. And it was data that was presented by ASHRAE. So they are presenting this information and things are supposedly much more efficient. Well, what's ironic is that when you're trying to determine the number of branch circuits that you got to have in a dwelling, you're still going to use 3 VA. You're not going to use 2 VA. But when you're doing the load calculation, you're going to use 2 VA for the 2026. I can see where that may get a little confusing for people, but we're doing a load calculation, so it shouldn't be confusing. If you're in 220, which is going to be 120 in the next code cycle, then you know you're dealing with 3 VA per square foot unless something changes, and it will be 2 VA in the future maybe. All right, so the next step is how many small appliance branch circuits did we have? Well, we already said we had 4, right? 2 in the kitchen, serving the countertops, and then we had an additional one because we needed it. And then maybe we ran a separate one to the dining room. Okay, 20 amp circuit, boom. All right, so in that scenario, it's going to be 4. So remember what I said, 220.52A requires it to be 1,500 VA each, and the minimum of 2 is required by 210.11C1. So this is why our forms are so great, is because it not only helps you learn the steps and you understand what these hashes means it's just a collection that you're going to make until you do a load calc. Right now, we're just compiling. So in this case, 1,500 times 4 is 6,000. Just add it to the list. Laundry circuits, we said there were going to be 2 of them. Just like it said in 220.52B, it's 1,500 VA each, and you're required to have at least 1, right? At least 1 laundry circuit, unless you're in a multifamily building where there's an actual laundry facility available to all of the tenants. And then you have an exception in there because all the tenants will have access to a laundry facility. And if that's the case, then this whole requirement for a laundry circuit in a dwelling unit could be removed. And then the receptacle wouldn't be required if the circuit itself is not required. Totally another topic. That's for multifamily dwellings. And that's if there's a laundry facility on site. Most of the time, it's not. They're going to create a laundry area inside the dwelling unit. Well, if that's the case, then you have to have at least 1 laundry circuit at 1,500 VA. In this case, ours has 2 laundry areas, okay, with 2 separate laundry circuits being run. 1,500 VA each, okay? And this is about the circuit, not the receptacles, okay? They run a laundry circuit and put 2 receptacles on it. That's fine. That's still 1 laundry circuit, okay? They run 2 separate laundry circuits. then it's two separate ones at 1500 VA, okay? All right, so we got all the stuff to start our first calculation, okay? So basically you add up lines 1, line 2, line 3. So what did we have real quick? We had 1500. I'm going to do this because I don't trust my math, or I don't trust the math of the presentation. Plus 6,000 plus 3,000. That is 14,565, okay? And that's what we have, 14,565. So that's what we have right here. Now, y'all know what it says in the code. Now we get to apply some demand factors. Whoop, whoop. Demand factors, and those are the demand factors in 220.45. So that has moved, okay, from 220.42, that has moved to 220.45 in the 2023 edition of the NEC. Y'all know that, right? So we'll go down here and look at what it says. Right here. Now, here's what tends to throw people. This says general lighting on 220.45, and you just remember me saying that, yo, that 3 VA per square foot includes general use receptacles as well, right? So it probably would have been nice if they had to put general lighting and in parentheses, general use receptacles as well. You just have to understand that that's just what it means, okay? And so basically, if you're dealing with the dwelling unit, is what we're dealing with, the first 3,000 of that 14,565 is at 100%. So what does that mean for you and me? That means that I take, of that 14,565, I'm going to take 3,000 out of that, and I'm going to sit it to the side. I'm going to use it later. Okay, it's a special sauce. I'm going to sit it to the side. And so I'm going to take that 14,565. I'm going to subtract 3,000 from it because I set that first 3,000 to the side. Now that leaves me 11,565, right? Okay, that 11,565, that's from 3,001 because we took the 3,000 and set it aside. So 3,001 all the way up to 120,000, which we refer to sometime is the next 117,000 because 117,000 plus the original 3,000 is 120. So that's why we call this the next 117,000, if you ever hear me say that. But anyway, it's the value from 3,001 all the way up to 120,000, which is a rather large dwelling unit, by the way. So the next multiplier is 35%, right? So what does that mean in the lesson? Well, that means that once I take that 3,000 away, I got 11,565, okay? I don't have anything over the 120,000 or over the next 117,000. So I'm just going to jump right down here and see where it says. Right here is 11. It says smaller than line 5. Okay, well, yes, it's smaller than line 5. Or 117. Yes, because it's less than the next 117,000. So it makes sense, right? So it just goes right here. Okay, and that is where this number minus the 3,000. So that's 11,565. Now we get to apply that demand factor, that 35%. So we take that 11,565. And we do that times 0.35, and that gives me 4,047.75, and we're going to round that to 4,048. Okay, we're going to do our rounding now. Even though it is VA, we ultimately know that at the end we'd have to round it anyway because we have the allowance to round it. Anything 0.5 or greater, we can round. We're dealing with VA volt amperes at this point. You could take the 4,047.75 and run with it, but you're going to ultimately round anyway, so we might as well round it now. Perfectly acceptable practice in the industry to do that. So there we are right there at 4,048, okay? But we're not done. We're not done. Why? Because now we have to take that 3,000 that we set aside earlier. We got to bring that back because that was at 100%, right? So we got to bring that back. So now this is the first time you see one of these solid blocks, right? Remember before that, all the blocks were lines. The solid is the first block that we're going to use in our overall calculation. So I take the first 3,000 that I set aside, I add that 4,048, which was what? 35% of the remainder minus the 3,000 that I took away. Add those two together, and that is 7,048. That's the very first number you write down, okay? That is your general use, general lighting. So on an exam, they might ask you what's the connected load versus a calculated load. They might want to know what's the general use and general lighting calculated load. Well, that means that you have to apply a minimum of 2 small appliance brand circuits, even if they don't tell you how many, a minimum of 2 at 1,500 each, a minimum of 1 laundry circuit, and you need to know the outside dimensions so you can do the 3 VA per square foot. Once you do all that and you add that all up, that's your connected load. Once you apply these demand factors, you have what's called a calculated load, okay? Or a demand load, either way. So we have 7,048, so that would be something we'd write down. Next, we got to deal with these small appliances that are fastened in place, okay? And we'll show you how to do the neutral at the same time, just so you kind of get a feel how you do it. All right, so in this case right here, what is connected? We have the dishwasher, we have a water heater, we have an in-sink waste disposer, we have a trash compactor, and we have these 3 attic fans, okay? So how many appliances do we have overall? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 overall appliances. Now, remember in the code, there's an area in 220.53 that says, hey, if you're doing a standard method and you got 4 or more appliances that are fastened in place, then you get to take an additional demand of 75%. You're thinking, whoop, whoop, I get to take something off, all right? So what you use on this form is you write all of your demands down, okay? So you've got the water heater, it's 4,500, it's from right here. You got the dishwasher, which is 1,200. We converted that earlier, right? Dishwasher, we took the 10 amps times the 120. That's our dishwasher. You got the disposer. We did that earlier. In-sink waste disposer, I think it was 9.8 amps times, and we times that by 115. So that's 1127. So there you go right there, 1127. Remember, use what they give you. And then we have the trash compactor, which is 7.5 times 120. Again, y'all know how to convert this, basic math. So 7.5 times 120. That's where we get the 900. And then we got the 3 attic fan. We're just cumulatively adding these together rather than add each one of them. So that's why there's a 3 here. So the attic fans are 4.2 amps each. It's 12.6 amps. So we'll just take the total, 12.6 amps times, 120. And that was where we get the 1512. Make sense? So those are all our appliances. Now, the question is, we're going to add all these up, and you got to ask yourself, do I have 4 or more appliances that are fastened into place? Yes, you do. Do I get to apply the 75% demand factor in 220.53? Yes, you do. So I'm going to apply that. So I'm going to add all these up. 4,500 plus 1,200 plus 1,127 plus 900 plus 1,512. And that gives me 9,239. That's what it says right here. And I'm going to multiply that by 75%, or take that times 0.75. And that gives me 6929.25. I'm going to drop the 0.25, and I'm going to get 6929, and that's my second load. Notice this is a solid box. Solid box, okay? Solid box. So that's our second calculation. That's our fixed appliance. Now, when it comes to the neutral, a lot of times when I'm doing this, I like to do the neutral while I'm at it. Why? Because this load right here, this is neutral too, because all of these loads we were talking about for general use and general lighting, they're 120 volt loads, so they have a neutral contribution. So this number right here, you can put a big N over here a lot of times and just put this number over here as well. Okay, because it's exactly the same. Whatever it is for the ungrounded conductors, it is for the neutral. It's going to see it because of the 120 volt circuits, okay? Easy peasy. Now, when it comes to the fasten in place, you want to make sure that you only, for the neutral, you only take the items that are connected to a load that has a neutral. So this water heater, that's not going to be a neutral load, right? So you've got dishwasher, that's a 120. You got disposer, it's a 115. You got the trash compactor, that's a 120. You got the attic fans, they're 120. So all of those are neutral contribution. So we're going to take this number right here that we calculated earlier. I'm going to do 9,239, and I'm going to subtract from it this water heater. Subtract 4,500 from it. That gives me 4,739. Now, the next question people ask me, it says, hey, can I still apply the same demand allowance on the neutral as I did on the hots because I have 4 more appliances? And my answer to that is absolutely you can. Don't let anybody tell you you can't, because again, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. So if I can do this for the ungrounded hots, I most certainly have the same amount of load that's going to be traveling on the neutral because these are 120 volt loads, right? So I can apply the same demand factor. So if that 4,739, I'm going to multiply that by 0.75. And that gives me 3,554.25. So my neutral contribution is 3,554. I'm going to write that out here on the side. Okay? See how easy it is? All right, next. Discussion. Provide examples of fasten place appliances found in dwellings. Y'all know what those are. Water heaters, dishwashers, garbage disposal, trash compactors, Garage door openers, believe it or not, absolutely they are. Appliances fastened in place, okay, and so on. Now, what's interesting is prior to the 2023 code, an EV charger, an EVSE could have been considered an appliance, and people were using that to add into the appliances in order to be able to get that 75%. Not that anybody did the standard method anyway, because everybody does the optional method, so it's kind of moot, but that was the argument. Well, in the 2023, they clarified that and said, no, time out. You know you can't use ranges, you can't use ovens, you can't use all that, but we also are going to let you know you can't add the EVSEs, which is an appliance. We're not going to let you use that in 220.53 when you're counting the number of fastened in place appliances. We're not going to let you do that, okay? So for the 2023, that is taken away, okay? So just so you know, that is it is an appliance. In most times it's fastened in place, but it specifically is excluded from 220.53 in the 2023 edition of the National Electrical Code, okay? All right. So the next thing we're going to get to, we're rolling along, is the clothes dryer. Now, 220.54 is very specific, right? It says you're going to use 5,000 or the nameplate, whichever's larger. So in our case, ours was 5.5, so 5,500. No brainer. I don't need to worry about the 5,000. But just remember, if you're doing a standard method on an exam and it gives you 4,500 or 4.5 kW or something like that, you're going to immediately in your math, you're going to jump to a 5. Okay, now if you're using the optional method, you're going to take the nameplate. Okay, so those are the little nuances. Now, like I said, in the real world, you're going to always use optional because it's going to result in a smaller service the majority of the time. On an exam, it's not the real world. It's not reality. It's just testing your knowledge. So make sure you remember those subtle points, okay, when you're doing this. All right, so in this case, ours was 5,500, so that's exactly what we're using. Now, while we're here, remember, there's an allowance in 220.61b for us to take 70% demand of that value that we calculated for the clothes dryer for the neutral contribution. Remember, neutral is 2 hots, a neutral, and an equipment ground. There's certain elements on a clothes dryer, the same as there's certain elements on a range that needs to get to the 120. So it needs a neutral for that to be able to do that. So it has a neutral contribution. But we get to discount it additionally. Okay, so that's what it says in 220.61b. It says, okay, look, I'm going to let you, you've already done a demand for this probably, or it's in this case, you didn't need to do a demand. It just took it at 5,500. We're going to let you do a little more. And they say, okay, what are you going to let me do? I'll let you take that 5,500 and I'll let you multiply that by 70%. And that's your neutral contribution. Okay, makes sense to me. So I take that 5,500 times 0.70. And that's 38.50. So right here on the side, the neutral contribution for the clothes dryer is 38.50. Remember, you're just adding these things up. Also, you notice this is solid on our form. That lets you know that this is part of your overall calculation. All right, what about that cooking? Okay, cooking. What do we got here? Okay, well, I have got a, let's see here. I have got a wall-mounted oven at 6, and I got a counter-mounted cooking unit at 7, okay? So you're saying, all right, what do I do with this as far as the calculation for the cooking? All right, so I've got 2 cooking units, 2. So what I can do is 2 things. First, since we're talking about a load calculation, we're not talking about sizing the branch circuit for anything. This is a load calculation. So I got to take these values and I'm going to go to 220.55. Now, on 220.55, it's going to say, okay, look, the general rule is to follow column C unless note 3 applies. And you say, well, what the hell is note 3 about? Well, note 3 says, look, if I have a cooking appliance that is greater than 1 3/4, which is 1,750, is greater than 1,750 watts, but not more than 8,750 watts or 8 3/4, if it's not more than that, if they fall in that realm, then I've got 2 other columns that I can use. I got a column A and I got a column B. Column C is your default. You're saying to yourself, what the hell is he talking about? All right, so let's go down here and I'll show you. All right, so here's 55, okay? All right, so here's what I was telling you, and I'll blow this up so you can see it a little bit better, maybe a little bit better. Okay, so here you see what it says. It says column C is to be used in all cases. All cases, folks. All cases except as otherwise permitted, not required, as permitted in note 3. Well, what does note 3 say? Well, note says if it's over 1 3/4, you heard me say that, so it's over 1,750 V, over Not 1758 VA and not 1 1 3/4 VA. It's over 1 3/4 through 8 3/4. So it includes 8 3/4. So if your ranges or your cooking appliances fall within this range right here, then in lieu of using just column C, and I'll show you column C, in lieu of just using this column, which is a demand factor, you just take the number and put it down. It says in lieu of that, which means instead of using column C, since note 3 applies to both of ours, because both of ours are within over 1 3/4, but not more than 8 3/4, that we can use column A and B if it's applicable in lieu of C. Well, by the way, what would it be if it was C for easy peasy purposes? Well, if it was C, since none of these are over 12 kW, I don't need to use any of the notes, so I can go right here. So this is for 1, and this is for 2. So since I've got 2 of them, I could use 11,000. But remember it said in note 3, it's permissible to use column A or B in lieu of C if they fall within this column. Now, interesting. Don't both of our cooking appliances, one that's 7 and one that's 6, don't they both fall within column B? Absolutely they do. So since they do, what did it say? Oops. What did it say down in the note? Well, let's get down here and read it. Here's the note. It says, if it's over 1 3/4 through 8 3/4, in lieu of the method provided in column C, okay, we already know it's 11 in column C because it's 2 appliances. It says, adding the nameplate ratings of the household cooking appliance rated more than 1 3/4, but not more than 8 3/4, and multiplying it by the sum, by the demand factor specified in column A or column B for the given number for the appliances, okay? Being permitted. Again, it's a permissive rule. I could go with 11 if I wanted, but why? My goal is to always get the smallest size service, and that's the goal you should have for exams as well. Always resolved to the smallest possible size. So I'm going to go up here and say, okay, well, since it falls under B, and at 2 of them, I can apply 65%, right? That's what you're thinking. You're thinking, okay, I get that. All right, so what is it? So what am I doing? Okay, so I'm going to add the 2 together. So I'm going to take me back here to the lesson. I'm going to say, okay, well, I'm going to add the 7 and I'm going to add the 6. So it's 7 plus 6. Oops, calculator stopped working. 7 plus 6 is 13, right? 13 kW. Remember that modifier was 65. So I'm going to take that 13, okay, times 0.65, and that gives me 8.45, right? 8.45. So that's what this is right here, 8.45. Convert that times 1,000. So take that 8.45 times 1,000. That is 8,450. And that is what our demand is for the cooking. Dude, it's just that simple. People make it way more complicated than it needs to be. Now, I'm already here, so let's do our neutral. We need to get that neutral. Remember, the neutral also is applied. We can apply the 70% based on 220.61b, right? So right here, we're going to take this value. This is the actual value, and we're going to do this at 70%. So I'm going to times 0.70, and that is, oops, let's take 8450 times 0.70, and that is 5,915. That is my neutral contribution. You just write that out here to the side. You're doing it at the same time, okay? All right, next is the heating. Well, we've already did this earlier. Remember, we compared the heat versus AC. Well, we know that it's 15 kW plus the 368 VA for the air handler because that's got to blow the heat around. That's a non-coincident load. That is not a non-coincident load because the air handler's got to work both when the heating's on and the cooling. So I can't discount that. I have to add that to both when I'm comparing the two. So I compared the air conditioning and condenser and the air handler, and I knew that the air conditioner was the largest motor in that non-coincident load. So it was less than the heat, but it was the largest motor. So I did the math at 125% of the air conditioning compressor plus the sum of the other 2 loads, the air handler and condenser fan, and it was far less than the heat. So what do I do to that air conditioning load? Pew! I get rid of it because I'm going with the heat. Now people say, well, that doesn't make sense, Paul. If the air conditioning's going, aren't you accounting for that load? Yeah, I am, because I'm sizing based on the greater of the 2, right? So the heat's going to pull way much more. So since I'm sizing for the heat, who cares about the air conditioning load? It's well within its scope because I'm sizing for the greater load, the heat. That's how it works with the non-coincident load. By the way, if you're doing commercial buildings and you're in an industrial facility, you may also be able to use this non-coincident load when doing a load calculation. So that 220.60 is not just for my example of heat versus AC. For example, at Encore Wire, we have machines that one cannot run when the other one's running, so they're interlocked. Okay, so when I'm sizing these loads, I can take these loads that are non-coincidental, whichever's the largest one, that's the one I would use, because this one cannot run when this one's running, and this load is greater than this one because they're interlocked in a way that they're non-coincidental. Then I can use that in my load calculation. So 220.60 can be quite powerful. Most educators like me, we use it in a dwelling calculation because that's the only real example of a non-coincident load. Okay, just remember, baseboard heating, which can be separately controlled, has absolutely nothing to do with a non-coincidental load when it comes to air conditioning. Totally runs separate. Somebody can have the baseboard heat on and air conditioning run. Okay, and it also goes to say with a heat pump. Heat pump in many, probably the majority of the cases is not a non-coincident load. So you're going to simply take the value from the heat pump, okay? And you're going to work with that, all right? So don't let that confuse you, all right? By the way, we do have videos over on Fast Tracks 2 that explains all those applications, even if we're using a heat pump. When we do the load calculations on dwellings, make sure you watch those videos. This is a speed round, but you'll get a lot more out of those, I promise you, okay? So in this case, we know, and oh, by the way, we give you all the language here so you can read it so you don't get confused, right? So we know that 15,368 is the heat and the air handler because that, again, the air handler is not a non-coincident load, all right? So that's 15,368. All right, the next, before we go, we have to find that largest motor. Now, so many people tell me, they say, Paul, this is confusing. They go, why does it just say this in the code? Find the largest motor. Why does it say it this way? Well, because you have to understand how the code works. It's not designed specifically for just dwelling units, right? So the part 3 is not just a dwelling unit application. I mean, it's very broad. So in this case, you have what's called 220.50, which reminds you that in a building, all of the motors are taken, and there's the largest one that goes at 125%, and it's the sum of all the other motors that are in the same group. Well, in a dwelling, for example, you've already taken account for all of the motors. Remember the dishwasher, the in-sink garbage disposer. Oh, you've already taken these at 100. But I have to find that largest motor based on 220.50. And why? Because it makes reference to 430.24. And what does 430.24 say? It says, look, if you're sizing circuits for motors, multiple motors, you find the largest motor, you take it at 125%, and you take the sum of all the other motors. Now, the reason that we say, well, wait a minute, Paul, we're not sizing conductors. Why are we even going to 430.24? Because 220.50 says use that method. Okay, it basically says use the methodology of 430.24 to do this. So since we've already taken all the motors to this point at 100%, yes, we've been able to discount them, but we took them at their face value originally. So that's already accounted for. So all this is saying, you know what? Go find that largest motor and I'll capture 25 additional. That's all it's asking, which is the same as saying largest motor at 125%. We already took it at 100. We just got to get that missing 25%. So what you do is you search for the largest motor. Now, since the AC was discounted, plus that was a 240 volt motor, and we're just like, it's already gone. It's taken care of because the heat is already taking care of that. So I don't need that. I've already done it. So you look and find the next largest motor in this dwelling. Well, the next largest motor in this dwelling, I believe, was the in-sink waste disposer, which was, let's see here, at a half horsepower, that was 9.8 times, and that was 120. Yep. And I think that is the largest. Let's see, 9.8 times. Let's see, where's the in-sink waste? Oh, 15. So 9.8 times 115 is 1127. That's the next largest motor in here, okay? The dishwasher, you might say, well, the dishwasher is 1200. That is a piece of utilization equipment. That is multiple things. That's typically not what we consider a motor. On an exam, I would not use that dishwasher is that. Because again, it is part of like a utilization equipment aspect, whereas the trash compactor is a horsepower rating. Not trash compactor, excuse me. The in-sink waste disposer is a horsepower rating, so that would be the largest pure motor. Okay. Let me tell you something. At the end of the day, It doesn't matter whether or not you did take the dishwasher. It wouldn't matter because a small amount, that 25%, is not going to amount to a hill of beans for the most part, especially in the dwelling calculation. So if you're doing an exam and you take the wrong thing and you're trying to capture that largest motor and the numbers aren't exactly lining out, don't worry about it. Take the best possible answer, the closest answer to what you calculated, because many people forget that 25%. But we're not going to forget it. Okay, now the reason we don't have to use the air handler, because that was the largest motor, is because we discounted it. It's not in play. The only things that are in play are the heat and all these other loads. We got rid of the AC, right? Okay, so that case, it is 1,127 times 25%. That's all we're trying to get. And that is equaling 285. That is the 25% of the largest motor. Remembering that we're not counting the AC because that was discounted. Got rid of all the AC. We went with the heat. It doesn't exist anymore. Best way to remember it. But what does exist is all these other appliances, all these other loads we calculated. So I need to find that largest. And in our case, that disposer was the largest pure motor. Okay. So we just simply add it. And you notice this is a solid bar. So that's just another thing that's added to your calculation. Now, back here, I forgot to do right here for the AC and heat. Let me remind you what I forgot to do because I want to stay with our method here. I forgot to give you the neutral calculation. So in this heating versus AC, the neutral contribution is only things that are the 120. And when it comes to the neutral, everything that's 120. Remember we discounted the AC, but at some point the AC will be running. And so it will be running, and so it will have a condenser fan that is 115 volts. So it will have a neutral contribution. So here's where people get confused, okay? When it comes to the AC for the neutral, we're only taking the loads from the AC and the heat that are going to be 120 volt loads, and we're going to write it right here. So in our case, only thing was it's air handler, which is 358, I believe, or 368, excuse me. You write that, and the only other thing is this condensing fan, which was 2 amps times 115, which is 2 times 115, which is, let's see, 2 times 115 is 230. So 230 plus the 230 plus the 368 is 598. So right here, the only contribution for the neutral is the condensing fan and the air handler. Everything else is 240 or 230. It's not a contribution to the neutral. So you write that little value, 598, down here, okay? To make sure I was doing the neutrals. I didn't want you to forget I was doing it. All right, now, largest motor, we already calculated it out, but remember, we still have the neutral contribution for the largest motor. So in this case, that is exactly the same. That is still neutral contribution. That is 115 volt load, so that is a neutral connected load. So again, still the largest load, so that 282 is also going to be used in the neutral sizing because it is the largest motor that has a neutral contribution, okay? Not the largest motor that's 240 volts. It's the largest motor that has a neutral contribution when it comes to the neutral, right there, okay? Now, the next thing you're going to do is just going to add all of those solid blocks up, okay? All those blocks that we did, you're going to add them all up. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Add them all up, and that should give you 43,577. That's what it should give you. Neutral, same thing. Add up all of the neutrals, and it'll give you its value. Now, we take that value. Again, you see what we're doing here. This is the different blocks, right? Different blocks. So it says minimum ampere divided, so 43,570. Look at Paul. He's staying with us, but he forgot to round because it's 0.5. So it's 43,577 divided by 240 is 182. And so it's 181.57. In 0.5 and greater, you round. So that is 182 amps. And this is purely a rounder because that's what it tells you to do when it comes to amps. If it's 0.5 or greater, you can round, okay? Now, if you had it done it the other way and kept the pure amounts and waited till the end to round it, it would have worked out to the exact same thing. It would have been the exact same rounding. So it wouldn't have made a difference, okay? So this is the conductor's got to have a minimum ampacity of 182 amps. But since also that conductor, what is the size of the service? Well, obviously at 182 amps, it's not going to correspond. So you're able to terminate that on a 200 amp overcurrent protected device. So the size of the service is 200 amps. I have to get a conductor that has to have at least 182 amps of size. Now, this is where it comes to sizing. Now, in our case, if it was a dwelling unit, it was 100 through 400 amps. This panel is supplying 100% of the loads. Then we get to immediately, and don't forget this, folks, you immediately get to use the allowances in table 310.12a. And in 310.12a, it's easy because as long as it doesn't exceed 400 and as long as it's at least 100, then you can simply go and pull from that table as long as the panel handles every bit of the loads that we just calculated, right? So if that's the case, we go to the code and we'll go up here to 310.12 because we can. And I will bump us right here, 310. Without doing any math, we'll just go 310.12 right here. Boom. And we come down to this little table right here. Boom. And here's where we look at it and say, since it was a 200 amp service, okay, that we can come down here to 200 right here. And you see it's a 2-aught copper or 4-aught aluminum, okay? Well, another thing that you could do and get used to doing is say, well, what if I don't want to use the table? Can I just use the 83% rule, the 83% that is found in 310.12a for this service? And you go, yeah, absolutely you can. So I do that 200, okay, because that's the service rating. 200 times 0.83 is 166 amps. So you're saying, what the hell do I do with that? Again, if you're not going to use the table, what do you do with it? Well, at that 166 amps, I got to have a conductor that's not less than 166 amps, right? Because the 83% says it can't be less than 83% if you're using the allowance in 310.12a. Okay, so I'm gonna go back over to the code, and I'm gonna go to ampacities, 310.16, just to show you how the 83% works for those that don't understand. I'm gonna go down here, and here's the ampacity table. I'll blow it up. We're gonna be under the 75, one, because we're over 100. Right? So we don't have to worry about 110.14c1 application. We're over 100. So we're going to stay in the 75 degrees C. And so we're in the 75 degree and we're going down. We need one that's good for 166 amps. Remember, 2-aught was a copper. That was what was given to us by the table 310.12a. So I'm going to go and see if it jives together, if it works out. So here we're under 75. I'm going to come down. I need 1. Okay, so here I am at 1-aught. That's good for 150. Not going to work. I need one for at least 166 amps. Well, 175, perfect. There's a 2-aught. Perfect. Everything lines up with the lesson. Now, you're saying, how can I check myself? How can I double check myself? Well, take that 175 that we had from the table from 75 degrees C, that 175 amp rating on that 2-aught, and do this. Take that 175 and multiply that by 0.83, and you say, okay, well, what are we doing? Oh, wait a minute. You taking that, wait a minute. I got to go up to the higher. I got to go to the 175. Oh, no, I don't. I just take the value. I have 166. I had already done that. So I look at it and go, okay, 166 is the minimum at the 83%, right? I mean, that's the bare root minimum. I got to have a conductor that maintains that 166. So you're sitting there saying, okay, well, this one's good for 175. I am good to go. Now, here's where people can get screwy. They say, that's great, Paul. What if I have an adjustment or I have a correction? Well, I can promise you for the most part in a dwelling, you're not going to have to worry about more than 3 current carrying conductors in a dwelling. So that one you don't have to worry about. So you're not going to worry about 310.15c1. But what you may need to worry about is an ambient temperature, okay? You may have to worry about it, and I know you probably all don't worry about it. What's the last time you did a service and you said, it could get warm out here where these service conductors are. I better adjust the ampacity. You never do. Come on, don't lie to me. You never do. You just go buy 4-aught for aluminum or 3-aught for copper for 200 amps. I know what you do, okay? I've been there. I know what you do. So, but if you did have to adjust it to make sure that your conductor still was at least 166 amps, because you still have to maintain that 83%. It can't be less than that if you use 310.12a, okay? So even if you're not using the table and use the 83% rule, you're saying, well, what if I was adjusting for ampacity in the ambient? Well, it's the same way you always do it. We have to have at least the 166, right? Because that's the 83% of what's marked on the breaker, okay? But I get to use the 90 as long as the insulation is rated 90 for adjustment and corrective purposes. And hopefully after the adjustment and correction, I still have a conductor that's good for what? 166 amps. That's when you can use the 90 to adjust and correct it. But at the end of the day, the ampacity of that conductor, no matter what happens, it cannot be less than 166 amps because that is 83% of the breaker's rating or the service rating, okay? Works the same way for feeders, by the way. So that's how you do the adjustments and things like that. But at the end of the day, the corrections. Adjustments are for the number of current carrying conductors. Corrections is for the ambient. At the end of the day, I think none of you ever do that. I'm just being straight with you. I don't think anybody out there takes the ambient temperature into consideration for their service conductors when they're just going from a weatherhead down through a meter to an emergency disconnect into a service disconnect. You probably don't, okay? I'm just saying. I mean, how many honest people do we have out there? Let's see. All right, so let's get back to the lesson. But if you did, that's how you do it. If you want to use the 83%, remember, 310.12 is permissive. That means that if you want to size it full size and use 310.16 and size it based on that calculation, go for it. If that's what you want to do. In other words, if you want to size it based on 182 amps or you want to size it based on the 200 amp rating of the device, that's your prerogative, all right? You get to do that. All right. Yeah, let's see what we got here. All right, so again, there's our sizes that we got. We just finished calculating that out, okay? Paul says, well, that's a great point, Paul. And this is what I laugh at people. And again, the beautiful thing about dwellings and the beautiful thing about this, folks, and about our industry is that the ampacity values that are in the NEC, okay, listen, you heard me say this. The ampacity values that are in the NEC 310.16 are very conservative. The wire and insulation is much more resilient today than it used to be. Okay, this is why you're not seeing a massive amount of problems, right? Okay, so I'm just saying. I am jacked, Adam, but I don't know what she's spiking in my coffee. But at the end of the day, I get excited about electricity even today. After nearly 40 years of it, I love this profession. I love helping people succeed. If you learned something from today, that's great. If you didn't, boy, I wasted a little over an hour of your life. I'm sorry. You can't get it back. It's gone. It's mine. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, I love teaching, giving people these things. All right, so let's see. What else do we got? Okay, discussion. What's the differences in allowable ampacity, which we don't use the word allowable anymore. It's just ampacity. So what is the difference in the ampacity of conductors found in 310.16 and 310.12a? Well, the biggest difference is the conductors found in 310.12a are smaller than those in table 310.16, since service and feeder conductors for dwelling units are only required to be sized to 83% of the rating of the overcurrent device, okay, as long as it carries the load of the entire dwelling. Right? If it does not carry the load of the entire dwelling, then you cannot use 310.12a. What good example could I give you to show you this? Okay, let me give you an example. I'm an electrician. Yay. I'm doing a service on the outside. I'm coming from my weatherhead. I'm coming down and I'm hitting a meter and then I hit my panel. Now my panel may be a 4-circuit panel feed through. Okay, so I'm feeding through and I'm going to a panel that's inside. Okay, so the main breaker of that feed-through panel is going to protect those feeders that's going in. However, you're asking, how do I size those conductors coming in? Well, can I use 310.12a for those? Typically not, although they never have to be larger than the service size. I'm just using it as an example. I cannot use 310.12b on those feeders. Why? Because in that panel, I've got 4 breakers. And if those 4 breakers are being used, for example, to hit an air conditioning unit because of close proximity and convenience, it's right there, so might as well put that in there, then since those conductors on the load side of that panel are not seeing 100% of the load, and you're saying, this doesn't make sense. It's all about diversity, okay? So you're saying, if it doesn't see 100%, then it means I can't use, right? I can't use 310.12 at all for those conductors that are being fed from the panel on the load side. Why? Because those conductors are not seeing 100% of the load, because I've got a couple breakers that are feeding loads before it gets to that conductor. That makes sense? That's the best way I can explain it. Those conductors are not seeing. Now, the service conductors that are coming down from the weatherhead to the panel, they are seeing everything. Even though they're seeing it in two separate panels, they are experiencing everything. So the allowances of 310.12a can apply to the service. Now, there is a little exception in there that says, or a little rule in there that says, hey, wait a minute. If the service is sized for the entire load, that feeder does not have to be larger than the service conductors, okay? So you don't want a situation where your feeders is smaller than what's coming in your service. So there is an allowance in there for that, okay? But you got to meet all those caveats, okay? Jason, absolutely. It's just one of those things in life. I tell people all the time, because I have people that'll send me nasty messages. They'll say, Paul, why do you do box fill? Once you learn it, you don't have... That's not true, because every time we go over it, we learn a little something more. It solidifies our knowledge. And the reason that I like to do all these things, which I'm hoping you folks know how to do, is because you're going to be leaders and educators and teach other people. And I want to make sure that if I teach it to you, that you're going to convey it properly to other people. Unlike what I see on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. People are conveying stuff and they're conveying it wrong. And if I can take the effort to go over things and solidify it and make sure that you understand it, then there's a high probability that when you regurgitate it to somebody else, it's going to be accurate. That's what I'm going for. Plus, I always think these are neat things to learn. I learn something new every time I do it. It just makes me better. It's not just about exam prep. It's in the real world. You can get better at all these things. But if you're going to teach somebody, you want to make sure you're really good at it. That type of thing, okay? So we did everything. So net neutral, here's the calculation for the neutral. I'll show you that because we showed you. Here's all the values that we added up. Remember, there's that 4739 for the appliances. Remember, we didn't take the water heater. I know this is hard to see, so bear with me. We took those fastened in places without the water heater, and we applied the 75. That's what it was, 3554. You remember that. We took the clothes dryer. That's where we got the 3850. I know that's hard to see. Just bear with me. Cooking appliances, we did that. That's at 5915. Y'all saw me do it earlier. That's a 70%. No electric heat, no air conditioning because they were all 240-volt loads. Let's see here. The air compressor, that was a 240-volt loads. There's that, no, that was the condenser. Here is the air compressor right there. That's 0 because that was a 230-volt load. Here's the air handler, 368. We got that earlier. There's the condensing fan, 230. We got that earlier. And there's the largest motor, 285. So that was 21,247. The exact same that we did before. We took that 21,247. We divided by 240. And that gave us 88 amps, 88.52 amps. We have to have a conductor that can at least handle the load. That's the first thing. Okay. So we got a 3 copper here. So we're going to go over to the NEC and see real quickly. When it comes, here we are right here. I'll pin it so you can see it. All right, so in this case right here, now, because of the type of nature of our conductors, right, the nature of our conductors that we have, we're like, okay, well, why wouldn't I be in the 60? Because at this point, it's all driven by the nature of the conductors that we utilized for the ungrounded conductors, which were THHN. They were under the 75-degree column. So in this case, we're still firmly going to be planted in the 75-degree column, okay, by virtue of usually this is how it's run. So in this case right here, 75, we're going to go down, and I need to have at least, what, 88 amps. So I get down here, or this is 4 is good for 85. That's no bueno. It's not going to work. This 3 is good for 100 amps. So right there. There you go. Now, where do I also verify this neutral? Y'all remember. So y'all remember what it says in sizing. So if we go look at 250.24 real quick. Let's go look at real quick. Let's just show you some stuff here. I just like to show you how all this stuff ties together. All right, 250.24. Let's go here. Okay, just start here. Okay, so here is, we got a grounded system, obviously because we got a neutral coming in. It's a grounded system. Okay, and we got all this stuff right here, the sizing, load sizing, main bonding jumper. Or here's our grounded conductor right here, right? Because you got to bring a grounded conductor to a grounded system. You have to at least bring it to the service, okay? So here it is right here, and it says the grounded conductor shall be installed in accordance with 250.24 D1 through D4. You come down here, sizing, all right? Got everything here, conductors in parallel, all this kind of stuff right here. So what does it say? The grounded conductor shall not be smaller, smaller than 250.102 C1. If I click that, here, and I'll blow it up. Now, the ungrounded conductors that we ran, what did we run? Remember what we ran? We ran 2-aught copper. So it says we're coming down here, and here's a 2-aught copper right here. So it can't be smaller than a 4. Okay, well, good news for us, it wasn't. It's a 3, but the 3 was based on the calculated load, right? So we obviously go with the calculated load. So that is why we're using the 3. But we know it can't be smaller than a 4 gauge based on 250-102C1 by direction of 250-24D1 through D4. See how this all rolls together? The code is an amazing thing. For people that say that the code is tough, and this is why I tell you, folks, this is the difference, okay, between an electrician who just posts videos and runs wires and does this kind of stuff and is really good for those 3-minute videos on social media. Great. But if you really put them in a corner and you question them, put them on the spot. Here's my challenge to you. When you meet these influencers at social media events or Nika, whenever, put them on a spot. Ask them a code question in their face. Put them on a spot. Raise their level. You see the Lexis and the Katies and the Dustins and all those. If you get them there, do me a favor. Do this for me. Put them on the spot. Make them feel uncomfortable. Because I'm going to be at Nika. Do that to me. Come to me and ask me a code question on the spot. Put them on the spot. But where you can tell the boys from the men is when you ask them about load calculations. Even if it's something as simple as a dwelling. They should be able to regurgitate the steps. Regurgitate the steps. That easy if they're truly educating somebody. That's the difference. You know what I'm saying? And so this is why I get so passionate about it, because I'm going to die. I'm going to be gone, okay? I could be the prince of darkness for the code. I'm going to be gone one day, right? You're the next generation. You have to carry this on and being able to rattle this stuff off. And people say to me, Paul, you talk this shit because you never got your hands dirty. How in the world could I talk about code, talk about the nuances of installation if I never freaking did it with these hands? That's what I laugh about all the time, because a lot of these social media, they've probably just done it for a couple years, and all of a sudden now they start a channel, they get all these followings, and then everybody thinks, oh, they're so great. No, it doesn't work that way, folks. The people that really know what the hell they're talking about can convey it and show you the scars from it, okay? Or you can Google it, okay? I've been around a long freaking time. So just be careful who you listen on the internet. I'm just saying, I'm not being a hater. I'm just saying, just be careful, okay? Just be careful. Now, we can't leave until we size what? We got to finish this thing. I need to do the grounding electrode conductor, don't I? I ain't leaving yet. I know y'all want to leave, but we ain't going yet. So next thing you know, we need to size this ground electrode conductor. Now, if you're on an exam and they don't tell you the type of electrode, then you're going to not go and use the allowances in 250.66 A, B, and C. What are those? Rods, pipe, or plates, ground ring, or a UFR. If it doesn't tell you on an exam the type of electrode, then you're going to go straight to what? Straight to the table 250.66. And the grounding electrode conductor is going to be sized based on what? The conductors that are supplying the system. Okay, so let's go look at it. In this case, let's see what we've got. So we know that let's see here. We know that our conductor is a 2-aught. That's what we're going with, a 2-aught. Okay, so now let's go over and get into it here. So I'm like, okay, y'all all know 250.66 grounding electrode conductor sizing. And by the way, if it's a DC system, just remember to put a 1 in front of that. Grounding electrodes, the GECs for DC systems, PV, things like that, it's 166. Kind of try to remember all those little things about maneuvering that might help you. Okay, so 250.66, here we are. Here's the table. We're talking about alternating current systems, and it's the electrode. And here you says size of the largest ungrounded conductor, ding, 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 ding. That's the hot conductor. In our case, it was a 2-aught. Now, real quickly, for those that don't know, if I had parallel applications, how do I do that? Well, I just take one of the legs, just one of them, from each set, and I add them together. That is called the equivalent parallel, okay? So when you see the language in the code, like this language right here, it says or equivalent area for parallel. That is just taking the circular mills of one of the legs from each of the sets and adding them together. That's what it means to say equivalent area. okay? Now in ours, we only have one set, so we're just dealing with the 2-aught copper right here. Well, here you see it says 4. So this is the size of the grounding electroconductor right here. It has to be at least a 4. Makes sense? All right, so let's go back to our lesson. And here it is. The minimum size is a number 4 right here. Keeping in mind that if it says in the question that it's going to ground rods, then if it's going to ground rods and it's not jumping from those ground rods to some other electrode that would require a larger grounding electroconductor, it basically going to the rods and stopping, then that is what we used to call the sole connection. It stops at those rods. If that's the case, then it doesn't need to be larger than a 6 copper. Now, it also says 4 aluminum, but since those rods are in contact with the earth, and that means that connection to that aluminum conductor would be within 18 inches, probably not going to see a grounding electroconductor that runs to the actual rod, pipe, or plate. You're probably not going to see that in aluminum, okay? So I'm just saying, I'm being real. It's probably going to be copper, okay? So in that scenario, it doesn't, if I had a rod, pipe, or plate, then I can utilize something other than what's in this table. For example, rods, it doesn't have to be larger than a 6. Now, one of the questions that people ask me, they say, hey, Paul, what if I am going to ground rods and I'm using 250.66a? I go, okay. They say, well, it doesn't have to be smaller than a 6. All right. They say, well, can it be smaller than a 6? And the answer to that is abso-freaking-lutely it can. It could be a number 8. And you say, really? Can it? Absolutely. If you go back and look at this table, you see if it's 2 or smaller, then it's an 8 right here. Right? And F312, watch this. Watch this. Watch this. I love the code, dude. I just love it because anybody can go work with your hands and you can get very skilled in the field. But what trains the brain and makes you the better electrician overall is people want to shy away from code. I had people that post comments and says, I don't care about code. You're not, to me, a well-rounded electrician unless you're being like a doctor or lawyer or a profession and you're constantly dipping your head in both. You need to be the most savviest electrician on the block. I swear, I believe it until I die. All right, so when you go back here, what about a 100 amp service? Look at this. A 100 amp service would allow you to have a 4 copper. Right? Under 310.12, right? So if that's the case, then let's go back to where I was. If it allows me to be a 4 copper, then let's go back real quick. I love how this works. 250.66. Let's go. Check this out. Right here. 2 or smaller. A 4 would fall under that. So it would be a 8 gauge. Now, there are some caveats to that, which make people not want to do that. Why? Because if it's an 8 gauge grounding electroconductor to a ground rod, now you're going to have to protect it from physical damage. And if you put it in a Ferris raceway, you got all kinds of problems. Now you got to bond it at each end. Wow, don't do that. You'll use a Schedule 80 PVC and get rid of all that crap, okay? But most people will say, you know what? Even though it could be an 8, I'm still going to run a 6. Why? Because if you run a 6 along the surface and it's not subject to physical damage, then you don't have to protect it at all. It's perfectly fine. It's running along the building, running straight down and running over to the rods. Again, we can argue peanuts about physical damage. Again, it's up to the AHJ to determine this. But in reality, if it's on the side of the house, well, my weed eater might damage it. Yeah, and tomorrow your house may burn down. What are you going to do? Sit up all night with an extinguisher? Come on, people. We gotta live our life. Okay, so in that scenario, if you ran a 6, even though an 8 was permitted, then you wouldn't have to protect it unless it was subject to physical damage. So, I mean, there's so many things to think about in this trade that it's what makes it the best freaking trade in the world, okay? So here, I just want to show y'all real quick the full form that we just did. So there's the form. You see how we filled it out? You see how we filled out all the elements? You see how we filled out everything here? Oh, this is the optional method, by the way. I'm going to do a speed round tomorrow doing this optional method and show you how easy the optional method is, okay? So basically here, we showed you how to fill out the form using our sheets. All these little things down here are from our sheets, okay? Let's see here. Adam Adam, what did he call me? Did you call me full of shit, Adam? What did you say? Paul, you are not full of, you just real and tell the truth. I've been taking your courses for a year and watching since the Wednesday nights and the days in the basement guy. So F the haters. I've been consistent. I'm always consistent. I tell people all the time, I don't wishy-washy. I have people on other forums go, Paul changes. Paul never changes. If Paul's wrong, he'll admit he's wrong. But I spend a lot of time trying to teach people. And whether you like me or hate me, F the haters, like you say, I'm still here to teach them too. Okay? Because I know that of the people that watch my videos, my haters can say what they want privately or on their channels. But here's the thing. They're watching me. And you know why they're watching me? Because they're learning something. That's why they watch me. You know what I'm saying? All right, so let's do some contest giveaways real quick. Let's get a couple people in here. I went over again today. There is no way I can ever stay on target. I'm just so long damn winded, and I just rattle off so much stuff. So let's spin some wheels here. Oops, that was my... What the heck is going on? All right, hold on. Wouldn't let me play my music, folks. Sorry. I must have crashed something. Let's see here. Okay, Jason. Whoop, whoop. There you go. CMECP's in the house. And he is registered for the Minimalist Wallet. Also, Jason, if you happen to win that, I'll make you one as a CMECP, also custom, if you win that, just in case. All right, let's spin the wheel again. Music's back. What's up, TikTok? You should be over here. I don't know what the hell is in my wife's coffee. How could she spike a K-cup? You know what I'm saying? All right, so here, Trade Hog. Well, I guess you could spike a K-cup after you pour it into the cup. I don't know what I was thinking. Bill, look at you. So you are in the drawing, but is a CMECP as well. Dude, we have some CMECPs on the roll here. Todd's also in here. Todd, I did get your email about the common neutral for feeders. I've been so busy, I will reply to you, my friend. But it is an example where you have multiple floors and you have panels on different floors. And usually it's dealing with something like called column panels, whereas these are feeder applications where it's sharing a neutral between these feeders that go to the different column panels. It's not a practice that is done much today. So that's what that's talking about is a shared neutral between those like column panels so that you have a shared neutral that goes to multiple floors. That's the allowance for it when it comes to feeder. It's very limited to the number of conductors that can be done this way, but I will respond to your email. I promise you, I did see it. I just haven't had the time to respond. Let's see. I've been very busy. In the last couple weeks here, it's just been a nightmare trying to get things ready for some stuff that we're doing, me and Jeff. So I don't want to divulge that. It's been very busy. So anyway, I got you, Todd. I will get those for you. Okay. Let's see here. Next, spin it again. Yes, one thing about this show on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, folks, you get Paul. I'm going to be real. I don't worry about running customers off. I don't worry about that stuff. I'm a real electrician. People say, oh, you're not an electrician. I came from the trenches. I was doing the work. I've owned multiple electrical contracting businesses. I have succeeded, and there are as many cases as I failed. Did I win all my bids? Hell no, I didn't win all my bids. I wish I did. I sucked at bidding. Even though I used bidding software, Conest, I sucked because I didn't know whether I was leaving money on the table. I struggled as a contractor, but when I got successful, it was easier and I started hiring people. And then that's where, I had to worry about HR things or people's feelings and all that kind of stuff. But today I don't worry about any of that crap. Okay. AJ, let's see here. AJ Baisley, you were in the drawing for Ohm's coin. That is awesome. Okay, one more spin, guys. Cross your fingers. Let's go. For those that are over on TikTok watching behind the scenes, you should be over watching over on Facebook, YouTube, fasttracks2.com. All types of things. Uh-oh! Rich, you're in the drawing for the Slate coaster. And again, we have the generic electrician one, but we also have the journeyman and master version as well. We also have the one I'm using for my coffee. We have the pie wheel, okay? And incidentally, people have asked me, Paul, do you shellac these to be shiny? Absolutely not. You want them to stay dull like this so that when moisture does get down into it, it is absorbed into the slate. That's what keeps it from running off and ruining your coffee table. That's the whole purpose of the slate. So people wonder, why do they make slate coasters? Just because they're easy to engrave? No, it's because slate is wonderful to absorb moisture that condensates down the side of your glass. That's the best way. Sometimes when you get the ones like ceramic, then the water comes down and just rolls right off the ceramic and onto the wood, and that defeats the purpose. That's why slate is always the best for coasters, and do not treat the slate, okay? Don't treat it. Let it naturally absorb that condensation, okay? All right. Woo, what's up? I didn't see you in here, Swartzy. Swartzy's in the house. Swartzy, I would like to have you on a morning show. Oh, that is something that we are going to introduce guests. So look, if anybody out there wants to be a guest, and again, I'm going to connect up with you, Bill. I saw your information you sent me. I want to have you on the show. But we're going to do a segment in the morning show where I can have a guest on, and you can chime in while I'm doing the morning show. You'll be a guest host, and we'll have random guest hosts. And you can chime in, and we can talk with everybody. But we're going to do segments where we have a guest host that joins me, okay? And they might be in a little bubble up here. They may be in a little bubble over here. I don't know where they're going to be, but they're going to join us, and they're going to be our guests on the show, and they can chime in, and that's going to be awesome as well. They can do it both audibly if they don't want to be visually, or they can do it visually, however they want, that type of thing, okay? And we're going to have guests on here starting, and that's what me and Jeff are working on. I know I've said more than I should. We want to introduce that to the show. So if you out there are just somebody that comes to the show every day, we want to know about you. We want to know what you do in the daily life of an electrician. Okay. So if you want to be on the show as a guest and be for that whole hour and just be my guest, my co-host, then that is going to be freaking awesome, because I love hearing from you folks. I love living vicariously through you. And so again, awesome. All right. Okay. Your job will be done in 2 weeks. So anytime after that, I am most certainly going to have Swartzy on the show. Most definitely going to have Swartzy on the show. Love to have Paul. Love to have you on the show, Paul. Talk about your printing, how you may be able to offer some of your services to some of the other electricians. Maybe you'll give them a good deal. You know, that type of thing. Share the love. That's what we're going to be. We're evolving this thing, folks. I want to have some CMECPs on here. Bill wants to be on here. Let us know what you got going on. That's a great thing. So anyway, that is it for today, folks. That's our giveaways. That's our show. Hopefully you got something out of it. Again, speed round. It wasn't so fast as I thought. But again, I taught you generally all you need to know about the standard method. We'll talk about the optional method tomorrow, and that'll even be quicker. That one I should be able to finish in an hour. All right? All right, folks. Till next time, stay safe. God bless. Be safe out there. We'll catch you tomorrow. And have a wonderful day. Grow yourself. Grow your business. Love your family. Be safe. And be a pillar of your community. That's what I should say. Peace. Ooh, Soul is in the house.
Whoa, 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 whoa. Big dog.
Thank you. Now, Seattle. Tell me how the hell to say your name. Is it Seattle? Seattle? What the hell is it? Anyway, love you guys. Peace.
Yeah.